Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan, and the topic of this 10-minute moan is the proof that when John Swinney says Scotland wants more migrants, he's talking through a hole in his head. Because a new poll that's been highlighted by the Scottish Daily Express tells us that the majority of Scots are of the same opinion and we should lower the amount of migrants coming to our country. This is despite him claiming not so long ago that we wanted more and telling Westminster that Scotland should have its own visas that it could give out to people wanting to come here. Now, what an idiotic expectation that was, because having no border between Scotland and the rest of the United Kingdom would have meant if Westminster were to say yes to that, these people could gain access to any part of the UK. So it was one of these things that the SNP do regular, where they ask a question, they know the answer has to be no, and then they use it in some way to tell everybody we should be independent. Also, there's some new stats came out about the population of Scotland, where in 2024 we peaked and we now have the highest population ever in Scotland. That is despite having a birth rate that is lower than the death rate. So the immigration problem is giving us masses of people. And once I've finished with this story about the poll, I'll come to these figures about migration and how mental they are. So the first thing we're going to talk about is this poll. Now, the Daily Express write, John Swinney has been left humiliated as a majority of Scots backed the mass detention and deportation of illegal immigrants. The SNP have for decades claimed that the people of Scotland have different values and opinions to those in the rest of the UK, especially about immigration. But this has turned out to be incorrect, as opinions on migrants previously seen in England are now being echoed north of the border as well. The First Minister gave a speech earlier this year where he called on for more migration to Scotland and for him to be given powers to control this, which was idiotic. A new survey has found that fewer than 1 in 10 Scots, 8%, agree with the SNP view that immigration levels into Scotland remain low, and it's a major blow to Swinney, who has long insisted that the country needs to bring in more people from across the world. 7 times as many, which was 56%, believe the numbers are too high. The First Minister has spoken out against mass deportations, calling them utterly chilling and at odds with Scotland's values and common humanity. Well, it turns out, John, you're wrong. Numerous protests have been held outside of migrant hotels across the country in recent months. The poll also asked whether they backed mass detention and deportations of those who arrive in the UK without permission, with 60% saying they supported the proposal, while fewer than a quarter, 23%, opposed it. Even among voters who backed the SNP at last year's general election, mass deportations were more popular than none. Absolute crank. Now, Norstat carried out the survey for the Sunday Times and showed increasing support for Nigel Farage and Reform's policy of mass detentions and deportations. Now, that's a policy that I'm not actually convinced of, but we'll digress. The SNP have spoken out strongly against this opening, calling the party far right. They also tried to shut down a Holyrood debate on immigration, calling it disgusting and disgraceful. But immigration has become a big concern for Scottish voters after previously only being one of those south of the border. Another poll released last week put immigration joint second behind only issues and concerns about the NHS as the most important issues to Scottish voters. Mr Swinney has repeatedly claimed Scotland needs more immigration due to the country's declining domestic birth rates, and I'll come on to this in a minute because this brings me in and fits in well with the second thing I want to talk about. But this is now an opposing view to the general public and plays into Mr Farage's hands, as he said that established parties are out of touch with voters' concerns amid crisis over housing shortages and NHS waiting lists. Glasgow is suffering a major issue due to its open door policy in migrants, with hundreds moving up from England to take advantage of the law surrounding offering accommodation to anyone who presents as homeless. It has become the asylum capital of the UK. Now, the stats were we had more asylum seekers than anywhere else outside London. But actually, when you look at per capita figures, we have more than even London. Isn't that frightening? Then we have some nonsense with Farage, blah, blah, blah. Right, so that's kind of the first bit of the story. The second bit of the story is the population of Scotland. Now, bear in mind, about a year ago in Holyrood, the SNP told us that we had a housing crisis. We genuinely had not enough houses to go around. They've done very little since then. However, figures just released for 2024 show that the population of Scotland actually rose by about 40 to 50,000 last year. That is despite having a lower birth rate than the amount of deaths to the people already here. The shortfall was about 15,000 people more died than were born in Scotland. So that means for the population to go up, we must have seen about 60,000 net migrants. Because some people would have left the country. So it's not 60,000 that's come in. There'll be more because the net figure is about 60,000. You need to add on the amount that have left Scotland in the same term to give you the true migration figures. But even when it gets above 52,000, which it's obviously well above because the net figure's about 60, what that means is we have 1,000 people every week coming to live in Scotland. In a country that in 2024 declared a national housing crisis, that we don't have enough houses. And this crackpot government, the SNP, in the same timescale, told us that we needed even more. Well, Scotland has now reached its peak and highest ever population figures. So how did we manage to be such a prosperous country previously if we can't cope with having such a small number now? And John Swinney et al. Telling us we need to bring more. These people are absolute crackpots. Now, if you bring 1,000 people per year into this country, per week into this country, that's got to have a knock-on effect on so much things. Housing being the obvious one. But in an already stretched NHS, and in a country that suffers from very poor infrastructure, it just makes it worse and worse and worse. Now, please tell me what increasing industries we have, because I can't see them. So we don't need these people to come in for industry either, and for the economics of the country. And we've been living this lie for decades now, where immigration's good for the GDPR. A lot of nonsense. The people are coming in and contributing, and yes, but when there's no new industries for them to contribute in, then how can that be a benefit for the bottom line of the country? What we will see is more problems at NHS and all our other social services as we bring more people in, and less money to spend on them because we have no industry. I see no actual efforts being made to give Scotland industry. I hear lots of buzzwords about green industry and transitions and all these buzzwords. But in real terms, I see no difference apart from declining on every single matrix. So there we have it. We have shown you, or I have shown you, that Swinney and the SNP are total cranks when it comes to migration. The figures don't stack up, and they are now officially out of touch with what actually Scots want. So when you next hear them say Scotland wants more migration, hit your big buzzer and tell them they're talking absolute nonsense. So if you want others to see this video, click the thumbs up, put your comments below and hit the share button. If you've not already done so, please consider subscribing to the channel. But more important than all that, unless you're the type of nutcase that in a country that doesn't have enough houses, you're telling us that we need more people, when we're already at the biggest number of population that we've ever seen, then not you, because you're evidently a crank. But everyone else, have a great day. Cheery bye now.